It's that time of year before Black Friday. You are looking for your next or first 4K TV purchase. Right before Black Friday, all the prices have dropped. All TVs have been released. All firmware updates done. All of the TVs are in their final form. Today we'll be talking about one of the most versatile, high-performance mini LEDs on the market, the Samsung QN90B, and why it should be the top of your list.
I've seen things most people wouldn't believe.
All right, guys, let's start off with one of its greatest strengths. The Samsung QN90B has an anti-reflective coating, which does an amazing job. There are very large windows right behind me. Samsung handles it like a champ. This is one of its greatest strengths, is a bright room performance. The wider color gamut for the Quantum Dot Mini LED shows very well here. Very saturated, very bright, very colorful, even in a very bright room. The design, the Samsung logo, is very small. Minimalist design, center stand, solar powered remote. Other areas other than the US or the UK do get two remotes. I rather have the larger remote as well. Solar powered remote is nice, very simplistic. Center stand is very durable. Panel does not move. Minimalist bezel in the front. Brush metal design. Dark gunship gray. Gunmetal gray, I think that's the color. Very beautiful. Again, this is their higher end QN90B. You do have 4 HDMI 2.1s full bandwidth on the back. If you want the one connect box, you'll need to jump up to 8K or the QN95B. Very simple stand design, one of the easiest stands to put together, does not wobble. I'll put the prices and sizes available up here in a second. I don't personally think the QN95B is worth it for the one connect box. I think it's a cool feature, but I'd rather have them on the TV. Save yourself some money. Again, a lot of sizes available from 43 inches to 85 inches. Here we are, still in a bright room, flipping the TV around to where smaller windows are behind me. You can see how colorful and beautiful the image is in a pretty bright room. Very beautiful. Very colorful. Has a very three-dimensional look even in a very bright room. The scene before was the windows behind me. This is a few windows behind me flipped the other way, and it does leap off the screen. Now we're going to transition into its perhaps biggest weakness would be darkroom performance. However, I would argue that it performs very well. Let's go right after it and challenge it right from the very beginning. Now, the way Samsung handles its dimming or local dimming with mini LED is it does crush details to a degree. However, blooming is nearly non-existent, where Sony tends to leave the shadow detail, but blooming is more evident. Samsung does an excellent job where there's barely any blooming here at all. There are no tricks with the camera. There's no ISO, no lowering settings. This is how it looks in person. Now we are in a home theater at this point. Very, very dark room. There is no light coming in at all. Now we jump around here between movie mode and filmmaker mode, standard mode. But you'll see that in filmmaker mode and in cinema modes, it handles local dimming amazing as far as its blooming. Keeps it under control. Now the one drawback I will show you soon is that it tends to dim the entire image if there is too much black on screen. Sometimes you'll lose detail. It'll crush stars, for instance. So it is the trade-off. As you move into this other demo here, you can see it is still very vibrant. We are now in filmmaker mode here. Very punchy, but again, in a pitch black room, things that are colorful remain colorful. When you do have more black than color on the screen, the the panel tends to dim a bit or look dim, or should I say more flat. However, I would argue when I get to this part of the demo, it actually handles it better than its big brother, the QN900B, or Q900B I should say, which is the 8K true flagship. I do feel the QN90B handles it better than the 900B did, which I was very surprised about. Special thanks to Mr. Robert and Wendy Zahn of Value Electronics for supplying the QN90B for extended review. Please consider making your next AV purchase through them. Check the description below for all their information and let them know that Brian from Brian's Tech Therapy sent you. Very kind. I've had this panel since launch, and they've let me have it this long to see it completely through, to see how the firmware updates have affected it. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Wendy. As we move into good friend Jennifer Gala's content here, you'll see that we are in filmmaker mode. Sorry, it's a little bit blurry. The reason I like using Jennifer Gala's content and her HDR Super Channel content is a lot of times this has a very narrow aspect ratio. So in terms of checking black bars with 4K HDR content, I like to see what it would do if the bars light up. And again, this is a very narrow aspect ratio. As I move off center, we're still good. If I go way off to the side, there it is. A little bit of blooming in the black bars, whether it's up or down, left or right, as long as you don't go too far, you're still good. That's pretty amazing as far as the black bars. Not perfect, but still very good. Inky black, I might add. Now, the reason I moved to filmmaker mode for this particular demo is it is live action. Due to copyright, I can't really show you movies or sports, but very natural image. Now, we will switch right over to, for you vivid dynamic guys, we'll move the settings to its brightest to see how bright the QN90B gets when it's completely unleashed. And it does an amazing job. Very vibrant, very high specular highlights, especially when there is colors on screen. You'll see also in the transitions, other than the very end of this demo, it handles the transitions from light to dark excellently. I will show you where it struggles at the end of this demo. However, keep in mind that we are on a dynamic vivid mode. In filmmaker mode, or even standard mode, this doesn't happen. But for many of you that like Samsung, you do want to see this kind of performance. Saturated, bright, colorful. That's something that no one else can really offer. You see here as the transitions come. Very little trailing there. You'll see it here with the local dimming a little bit, but not much. Again, no tricks with the camera. Camera is left at auto. There you see it a bit more. Those are very fast transitions. Otherwise, very good. You wouldn't see that if we were in filmmaker or even standard mode or in a cinema for that matter. Now here is the torture test, I should say, that affected the QN900B as we moved into this particular demo, which is ironic as it is Samsung's demo. Is that here we are back into a filmmaker mode, showing you how the colors can look a bit more natural as long as they are warmed up. This helps reduce our nuclear green that Samsung is so famous for. Now, Samsung's can be calibrated down. They're more difficult to calibrate than other panels. Still can be done. For me, they are not the most accurate, obviously, but they do have a much wider color gamut. You can reel them in, as you see here. Now, in this particular part of the demo, you'll see some vegetables come up. You'll notice the panel dims very slightly. On the QN900B, it dimmed quite a bit, especially in this champagne area. It really doesn't do that with the Q90B, and I'm very happy about that. But it's not quite as bright as it should be. So it does gray it out a bit to avoid any kind of blooming. It flattens it out, but I'm very pleased with how it handles it. Now heading over to Jennifer's content again, this is an excellent demo where it shows darker levels and specular highlights with the sparks. I do like showing this demo, shows both at the same time, handles it very well. Again, it is a trade-off from allowing shadow detail and more blooming, or flattening it out a bit. As you see here, even the specular highlights and the stars looks good. Now, in a direct comparison to an OLED, you would notice that a lot of those stars are missing, but they do look pretty bright, where the 900B looked a bit dull. Now, this is a true torture test from Jen in the ACR Super Channel. And you can see it handles it really, really well. Think about what we're doing here in a fully black screen, having bright highlight whites dripping down the screen. And how the local dimming handles it amazingly well. Now you can see in between where it is lighting it up a bit, but still really good. Now, as we're pretty far into the video now, and I get to the one part with Samsung I do very much struggle with, and I've been very vocal about this, is their firmware updates. The quality control has always been in question. They do sell a lot of panels. Their quality control has always been an issue. However, for me, it's the changing of image quality with firmware updates that I have the hardest time with and the hardest time trusting. So my advice to you is, if you purchase a Samsung that you love, I would take it offline and use a device for streaming. HDR performance, HDR impact, they are amazing. Now, moving into its versatility, for me, gaming is one of its greatest strengths. Samsung was one of the very first manufacturers to really embrace gaming many, many years ago, and they've always been at the front of it. They started with the game optimizer, which LG adopted. Samsung also has 144 hertz on the 43 and 55 of this model. You can also do custom settings or custom resolution and frame rate on PC for 144. Very low input lag. Now, typically what Samsung started and have moved away from is disabling local dimming with VRR enabled. Again, they do have VRR, 4K 120, 1440p 120. Something like Returnals does not look good without local dimming. Samsung stopped that practice. The local dimming has been enabled with VRR enabled, which is very pleasant to see. The local dimming isn't quite as effective as it is outside of gaming to keep latency and input lag low, but I'm glad they've gotten rid of that disabling local dimming that they had on previous models, as to me it was a no-go. Contrast ratio suffers in game mode, but now on this model, no problems, looks very good, very colorful. Some might say, and this is personal preference, that it will always look a bit too cartoony for their tastes. They also have a Motion Plus you can enable that some people love to give you the feel of a higher frame rate without much lag. Going through some of the gaming settings, I do love the way Samsung attacked gaming this year with the S95B, Q900B, and the QN90B. Now, the reason why I want to cover this panel this time of year is Samsung really drops the prices. So having the choice of sizes from 43 on to 85, this will be a panel that many of you will look to, maybe even 4 months from now. Going through the different presets in the game optimizer, I don't feel the game optimizer is a fad. I do use mine on the LG C1. I do like the FPS counter, especially on PC. Lets me know if I'm in the right mode, especially as we wander in many of these games in performance and quality modes. It's good to know which one you are in as we move over to Modern Warfare on the Series X. Very snappy, very quick. Now, I did notice the lack of pixel response from going from instant pixel response on an OLED to the LED. That's how quick the Samsung is. No delay. Skybox looks good as I show you the Molotov cocktail. Flames, specular highlights are present. Doesn't really wash out. Screen uniformity on my model was actually very good. No jail bars and very minimal DSC, if any. Love the movement. specular highlights. I will say that the one thing I didn't bring up, it doesn't sound great. Actually, I shouldn't say it doesn't sound good. It just doesn't get very loud. Where on a very bare bones TCL, it can get very loud. Now, in closing, love the panel. Samsung QN90B is a true flagship, though it is the step down. I'm happy it's a step down simply because it drives the price down. At the end of the year, all updates are finished. I think it's beautiful, fantastic in a bright room, fantastic choice for gaming. Blooming is at a minimum. Again, if you're okay with those blacks not feeling quite as bright, the specular highlights dimming a bit, it's an excellent choice for many of you. So for me, especially at this time of year, this is one of the best choices in the market, especially at the very high end. Samsung QN90B Mini LED, very versatile, bright, beautiful. Love you guys. Thank you for watching. Take care.